Good morning. Today I want to tell you about talk to you about Lillian Hellman's play, Children's Hour, in relation to the chapter on culture and interpretation in Wallace and Shepard's Studying Plays. Um, in the chapter Culture and Interpretation, they talk about the importance of looking at not only the play text itself, but where was it produced, where was it performed, and when was it produced, and when was it performed, in relation to not only what the playwright wrote, but who performed it, where they performed it, and how the audience, or who the audience was, and how the audience reacted. We're going to look at that by accessing what's available online, and I've limited to what readily comes up, and so we're not going to talk too much about performers in the first productions of the play, since I haven't found too much information about that. What I have found information about, and what you could easily find information about because it comes up in the first few things that pop up about on a Google search, is where it was performed and the assumed audience or anticipated audience for this place of location, and that will garner us quite a bit of information. One of the first things that comes up on a Google search is the Timeline Theater Study Guide for Hellman's play, and in that we find out that it was performed on November 20th, 1934 for the first time at the Maxine Elliott Theater. Now, we don't get any more information about the theater from the study guide, so we have to Google the name of the theater. We type that in, Maxine Elliott Theater, and up comes the IMDb database, or International Movie Database, one of the most common and the largest database for movies and actors, etc., online today, and it's used for recent or performances that are at the theaters today as well. What we find out about the Maxine Elliott Theater is that it was owned 50% by a woman, Maxine Elliott, who had the theater built in 1908, and she co-owned it with Lee Schubert, who had sold her the land. We also find out that Riders to the Sea was performed here in 1911, along with Children's Hour in 1934. If we go back to the Timeline Theater Guide, we do find out one thing that's good to know, is that the play ran for 691 performances, and that's almost 2 years straight. Now, it wouldn't have played every night, so this is a few nights a week over several years. And we also find out that the audience clapped enthusiastically when they first saw this play. And if we look again at the IMDb database, we know that 935 people could watch the play in any given night. That's how many seats there are in this theater. And so that's almost 1,000 people and 691 times. Now, even if you don't fill the theater, that's a lot of people that saw this play in New York. And it was very popular. We also know from looking at the theater that it was located on 39th, which is a couple of streets below the theater district today, but was the popular theater district in the 1930s. And so it was Broadway. And the play was produced in the mainstream public venue for theater at the time. And this tells us a little bit about Hellman's reputation, but also a little bit about the willingness of the theater to produce this play. But that willingness wasn't shared by everyone. One of the references that you'll find if you look on the web for Lillian Hellman and Children's Hour is Jewish Women's Archive. And the Jewish Women's Archive, or jwa.org, will tell you that the mayor of Boston in 1935, he banned the play. He did not want it to be seen in Boston. And the Jewish Women's Archive also tells us that in 1935, Hollywood did want to see it. At least Samuel Goldwyn Mayer, who put a bid in for it, he made it into a film in 1936 called These Three. Now, Samuel Goldwyn is one of the biggest, or was one of the biggest producers, is still one of the biggest names in Hollywood for production, part owner of the Samuel Goldwyn Mayer production studio. You'll recognize him by the big lion that usually appears at the beginning of movies, or a lot of movies that come out of Hollywood. He decided to produce the play. He wanted Lillian Hellman to write the screenplay, and she agreed, but they also agreed that it would be better to make it into a heterosexual love triangle because there was a law against having homosexuality on film at the time. Okay, we're going to stop here for this first video clip because I've again been having some problems in recording these, and I'll be back for a second clip in just a few minutes.